Many Breton nationalists, in varying degrees, had advocated some sort of collaboration with the Germans in order to secure Breton independence. So Béziers-Perrot was the extreme militant wing of that tendency. A fighting force that was purely Breton in action against France. And because it undertook that role, it ended up essentially being used as an auxiliary force by the Germans to root out resistance fighters.
Célestin l'Aîné était le chef incontesté de la Béziers-Perrot. C'est lui qui négocie avec les Allemands. C'est à la demande de Célestin l'Aîné que les membres de la formation Perrot ont touché un uniforme Waffen-SS. C'est une unité de la SD. SD, c'est le Sicherheitsdienst. En fait, c'est la police SS. C'est même la seule unité militaire allemande composée exclusivement de Français à s'être battue contre d'autres Français sur le sol de France. Leur mission, c'est la recherche des résistants et infiltrer les maquis, infiltrer les réseaux de renseignement. Il y a des dossiers que j'ai retrouvés aux archives, il y a eu des enquêtes après-guerre où effectivement plusieurs témoins font état de membres de la formation Perrot en train de torturer les résistants. Nous sommes ici devant l'école publique d'Uzel. Pendant le mois de juillet 1944, Uzel est occupé par un détachement de la Wehrmacht. Il y a également des feldgendarmes, 3 officiers de la Gestapo et une dizaine de membres de la formation Perrot. Évidemment, on ne peut pas les reconnaître, ils sont en uniforme allemand. Et ils participent ici, dans cette école, aux tortures des résistants qui sont arrêtés dans les villages autour d'Uzel. Le soir ou dans la nuit, les résistants sont emmenés dans la forêt de l'Orge, où effectivement ils vont être fusillés ou pendus.
Here in these woods, outside the village of Ussel, is the Field of Martyrs. In it, the mass graves of 34 men and women, tortured and executed on the instructions of the Nazis by the Béziers-Perrot under the leadership of Célestin l'Aîné. Among those buried here is Mireille Chrysostome, aged 20 years. She was executed on the 14th of July 1944, Bastille Day. This was no isolated incident. There are mass graves like this all over Brittany. I went to meet Désiré Camus, a resistance leader. His unit fought against the Béziers-Perrot in Brittany and suffered heavily at their hands.
Des miliciens de la formation Perrot, la Béziers-Perrot, commandés par Célestin l'Aîné, sont arrivés dans ce secteur et ont demandé où était la ferme, où était le maquis, en parlant en breton et habillés en civil. Les gens leur ont indiqué où était cette ferme et sont rentrés dans la ferme en disant « Nous sommes en panne avec notre voiture, est-ce que quelqu'un peut venir avec nous ?» Et c'est là donc que le moine Yves et Henri Robert et Henri Yves sont venus avec eux jusqu'à la voiture. Et là, ils les ont amenés jusqu'ici et ici, ils les ont tués. Massacrés. Voilà l'histoire.
As the head of the Béziers-Perrot, Célestin l'Aîné may not have pulled the trigger. He may not have tortured anyone, but he was the mastermind behind their actions. In 1944, as the Allies liberated Brittany, many Breton collaborators implicated in the crimes of the Nazis fled France. Among them was Célestin Lannes, and the most loyal followers from his SS militia, the Besson-Perrot. It was a journey that would take them all the way to Ireland.
Les plus compromis, ceux qui savent que de toute façon, s'ils reviennent en France, c'est la peine de mort, hein, des gens comme Lenné, comme plein d'autres. Pour eux, pas question de revenir en France, donc là c'est la fuite à l'étranger, par les réseaux, les mêmes réseaux que les réseaux nazis. Hein. Ceux qui sont revenus en France, qui se sont fait arrêter par la police, certains d'entre eux avaient sur eux des documents, des lettres écrites en anglais, de recommandations auprès du consul d'Irlande à Paris, pour leur trouver une filière pour aller en Irlande.
In 1947, word reached Lannes that he could escape to Ireland. The first Breton nationalists who had arrived in Ireland after the liberation of France reported that the Irish government was prepared to grant them asylum.
The former head of the Breton Nationalist Party, Raymond Delaporte, reportedly had an interview with De Valera, in which De Valera advised him to continue using the alias with which he'd entered Ireland, so that then, if the French asked De Valera, "Is this man in the country?" De Valera could truthfully answer no. Célestin Lannes, by that time known as Neven Henaf, and an associate came from Germany, crossed into France, and were at Paris, where they then obtained false ID cards that enabled them to travel to Britain and eventually to Wales. Neven Henaf and other members of the Besson-Perrot who came via this route entered Ireland that way.
Lannes kept a low profile in Ireland, but he did associate with other Bretons. Jean-Pierre Lamat, a Breton anarchist who lived in Ireland in the 1970s, is one of the few people who got close to him.
What I know is that they were welcomed, but they were not helped. When I met him, he was living very poorly. First in Coolock, near Dublin, and after that I met him in Oranmore, near Galway. He was so knowledgeable, he could have been my master, and he was so opposite in the idea. He was a friend of the Nazi, I was an anarchist, so we can have been enemies. I believe that we were between the two. He was, for me, not a master, not an enemy, but something between the two.
Lannes' time in Ireland went largely unnoticed. Few people got to know him. He died in Dublin in 1983.
Neven Henaf created the Besson-Perrot when everybody was sure that the German will not win. And he wanted to leave something unforgettable for the Bretons and for the French. And the best way to leave something unforgettable is to leave something unforgivable for the French. And that's why he created the Besson-Perrot.
As the Allies pushed through the Nazi territories, they stumbled across one of the most shocking examples of man's inhumanity to man. The Allied soldiers who liberated the concentration camps were always appalled by what they saw. Some of them indeed were traumatized for months, some for years afterwards. And I have to say that going through these camps today, one is still filled with that awful sense of foreboding. Across Europe, the Red Cross struggled to find temporary homes for the many victims of the concentration camps. Ireland was asked to help. This request exposed a latent anti-Semitism within Irish society.
Ireland discriminated against Jews before, during and after the Holocaust. During the 1930s, Jews were discriminated against in how they made applications for refugee status. During the war, prevalent anti-Semitism in Irish society made it difficult for the government, that is de EIRE, to move forward with plans to help Jewish children from Vichy France.